Tonight, the penultimate episode of Legion. That's right. Chapter 26, possibly. I believe it's chapter 26. Not only do we learn that all babies are crazy, we get to see the return of Charles Xavier and not one, but two Amal Farouks. The Legion After Show starts before, later. No, now!
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hi, Daddy! Welcome to the Legion After Show. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by our illustrious panel, which I have to commend us. Let's pat ourselves on the back. We've all been here for a few weeks in a row.
Yes.
And I just jinxed it. I just jinxed it. Next week is going to be just me. But
yeah, because you said daddy and it creeped us out, so
it
we're
was
not
supposed
coming back.
But now, was it the David's talking to his daddy, or was it David's legion of followers calling him daddy? I don't know.
So is this a legit who's your daddy?
Yes, that's the real question.
Daddy.
But who's next to me?
Hey, I'm Alana Jordan and I'm upset.
But one thing you're not this week is hungry. Because
I'm
last
not
week
hungry.
there was a lot of burger talk last week.
Last week we went and got hamburgers after the show, and it was delightful.
Yeah.
And if you follow Alexa Capiello at Alexa Cappy on Instagram,
CAPPY.
yeah, you would have seen that we all went out for burgers.
Precisely, because
I
I
put
like
it
to
on my
document
story,
everything.
too.
Yeah, look, if you don't put it on Instagram, it didn't happen.
It did not happen.
I wish my burger didn't happen.
Oh,
Yeah, but you wanted to get chicken and waffles.
I
You
know.
talked
I
yourself
should have
out
got
of it.
chicken and waffles like they told me. I asked for their opinion and I went against it.
Well, we gave you the option to go back in time and change it.
Where's your
True.
switch, man?
And then you were like, my teeth are going to fall out and I won't be able to eat this. And we were like, all right, shut up.
Yeah, I kind of need my teeth.
That's basically what happened. Jeff, say hello to people.
Hello. I forgot. I was about to say, I didn't even introduce myself. I was too busy talking about the chicken and waffles. But
Look, that's all that really matters. That's why people tune in to this show. They
like-
want to know what we want to eat
It was
afterwards.
great. It was honestly awesome that you mentioned Daddy, because I felt like this episode should be called Daddy. It's just Daddy this,
But they're
Daddy
never
that.
called anything. They're
I
just
know,
like,
chapters.
Chapter 27.
This would definitely be Daddy, the Daddy episode.
What would be great is if next week's episode was called like chapter 1.5. They're just like, forget all the numbering. Let's just, go back to the beginning.
They're just like Legion, Season 3, Episode 8, the last one.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Well, if you read the descriptions on, the little DVR descriptions that come up, for this week's episode, it says the beginning of the end. And then for next week, it says the end of the end. So I thought the beginning of the end was the first episode this season, but that shows what I know. In any case, let's talk about this episode and how everybody felt about it. I feel like I'm always very chivalrous, so tonight, Jeff, you first. What did you think?
men first. Let's do that. No.
It's really.
The episode was great. I really enjoyed it. It's great to see Professor X back again.
Charlie,
And-
as I call him.
Yeah,
we're tight,
or
yeah.
Daddy. There's a lot of different names.
Look, he got
look.
called Daddy by a lot of different Davids tonight.
True. There's a lot of people that call him Daddy. But no, it was a great episode. It was refreshing because last week was not my favorite, but we're back. We got to see a lot of cool people, and I really liked the episode.
And Alexa, what did you think?
I very much liked this episode. I was talking to you afterwards, and I was saying...
I was not listening,
Yeah, I
so
know.
remind me what you said.
No, you said, yeah, I agree. Anyway,
Yeah, I agree.
I liked this episode. It was great. I thought it was well written. I like when they keep with the linear aspect of it. I know the whole point of the show is to kind of follow on this journey where it's all over the place, non-linear because it's David's mind. I understand that. But the episode prior, when they were getting all into Sid re-growing up and us spending the entire episode watching her re-grow up, I was just like, oh, let's get to Farouk, let's get to the problem at hand.
But we did have an awesome rap battle. Let's never forget the fact that we did
have the rap battle, which was worth it.
Yes.
But this episode I thought was bomb, and I loved seeing Professor X again, and I loved watching David interact with him. That was so great.
Now, Alana, you were the one on the panel who enjoyed last week's episode.
Yeah, the only one.
And I will have you know,
And I'm the only one.
one of the other many shows that I do at AfterBuzz is Marvel TV Weekly. Sundays at 9 Pacific. Thank you very much. My co-host Zia also liked that episode, so you are not alone. She really liked it and told me to shut up for saying that I didn't like it. So you should have just done
Hey.
that. So
Well, then shut up. Stop plugging your other shows.
at least they're on network. Anyway, but what did you think
true.
of this week's episode?
I really liked this week. I mean, I still stand by my feelings for last week. I still thought last week was great, but I think that, we needed all of last week so that we could have the payoff and the backstory of that one line of Sid talking about people saying they want to live multiple lives and her saying, I did. I grew up twice, so...
Right. All is not forgiven for last week, but at least it's referenced. It's not one of those things that it's just like, yeah, you didn't need to watch that. So at least they're reminding us, like, yes, she's different than she was 2 weeks ago because she
tied her hair back.
Yeah, that's how we know she's different.
She did more than that. She lived 2 lives. Like she
Right.
Yes, but at the end of the second life, she tied her hair back.
babies now,
Yeah.
right?
First she
Everybody
ran.
knows.
This time she crawled.
However, to the actress's credit, I do feel like Sid is much more comfortable with herself. Like on screen, I could tell that she's much more confident, and comfortable, and is ready to take action, as opposed to previous Sid, who's just like all over the place.
She's finally living up to her terrible tattoos. First.
Me first.
So, one of the things that I enjoyed was sort of the flashback, and the episode starts right at the beginning. Professor Xavier showing up in Morocco, and one of the things I like a lot, Brianna, it'll actually be, I think, image 2. I didn't start with the one I thought I was going to do. It was the first one in the email. It's the one of Professor Xavier in the hat. This is from Uncanny X-Men 117, which in itself is a flashback story and tells the story of how Charles Xavier met and defeated the Shadow King.
He looks like Michael Jackson in Smooth Criminal.
Yes, this was years before. This was like a decade before Smooth
Does it
Criminal.
not?
So Michael Jackson totally ripped off Professor X.
Yes, 100%.
And the color scheme is not the same, but as I was watching it, I was thinking like, this looks very
That
familiar.
makes Michael a smooth criminal.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Amal Farouk, a very smooth criminal,
Yes,
as
truly.
we learned. So I liked that we got to see this imagery. And if you skip to the next one as well, Brianna, then you'll see the sort of the silhouette of the opera, the play
The Shadow Theater.
The Shadow Theater, yes, the Shadow Puppets, as it were. The outline was that Spanish, what is that, a conquistador style helmet or whatever that is, that you see there on the lower right hand corner. For those of you on YouTube, of course, if you're listening on iTunes, none of this is helping you at all. But
You can picture Conquistador in your
you can
head.
picture what it looked like, and
shadow
if
of
you want to
one.
look it up, you can always Google. You can always Google those images. So I just thought it was cool that they were able to do it. It's not a literal adaptation of what happened in that episode, nor should it have been, by the way. Because we were sort of talking about it, but that's Classic X-Men number 23, which is a reprint of the very same story, but I thought it was a better image. So anyway, I like that there were these little nods to it, and just sort of the feel of them kind of sitting there eating dinner. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Morocco, but when I went, no, there was not a table with mute children, but it definitely had that feel.
And you haven't been to the true Morocco,
I
my
didn't. No, I
friend.
went to the touristy Morocco, the one where the children at least pretend that they can speak. But so I thought they did a good job of capturing all of that feeling, sort of the vibe there. And I'm sure they didn't film that anywhere near Morocco, so.
Soundstage.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm considering it was inside, and they were just like, "It's Morocco because I'm putting jam on this."
I think they went to there's a Moroccan restaurant in Ventura and Coldwater. They probably just filmed it there.
I've been there. Great water.
Filled with mute children.
Oh my
Great water. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you tried what they're known for, which is their water.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that this was great that we kind of get this meeting of Professor Xavier and Farouk, and there's some really cool just visuals. Obviously Professor Xavier's having his nightmare in his dream, which is a premonition to the things that happen over the next 3 minutes in the episode, which is "you should not have come," which shows up a few times. And what I love about how weird this show is, when the driver comes to pick him up, he's He's holding a painting of
Yes,
Charles Xavier.
yes, but I thought about this, because you have drivers that you call to show up and pick you up at the airport unless you
Sure.
take Lyft or whatever. Anyway, they have a sign that says your name,
Yes, of course.
but this time he had a painting. And if
Right.
you think about a painting, it takes A, a long time, B, you're usually staring at that person's face for a long time. So, Farouk actually said something to Xavier later on, like, what do you say? What a privilege it is to see and to be seen.
Right.
And so I felt like that was a bit of a, like, I've been thinking about you for a long time. I've been really wanting to meet you. I basically him saying, I care about you. So that was an interesting way to start off the scene, the meeting, per se.
Yeah, one of the things that I found interesting just visually was the way that they represented the fact that this was a much younger Farouk, even though, I mean, it's not, the idea is that he's thousands of years old, but he looks like he's like half the age of the Farouk that we know, but I guess who knows when and where he's lived since this happened. So I thought they did a great job of differentiating the two of them. And we really get to learn a lot of things about him. The driver, whose name we never get, he is just a subject a subject, and my king is most excited to meet you, is actually what he said. But he talked about how Farouk was, that he had no parents. The country itself birthed him from the mud. So that guy sounds like he's definitely drinking the Kool-Aid, and we see that it's not that dissimilar from the followers that David built for himself, except he lets them talk. Even though he gets-
Especially when we see like the
flash
flash
Yeah.
into David's mind.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found just so well done was, I guess we're jumping ahead a little bit, but when Farouk is sitting across the table from David, and all he hears is that song, and he can't get a read on him, and obviously he panics, and he's like, I gotta go. Alexa, what did you think about the interaction between Farouk, Professor Xavier, and David all sitting at the table together?
It was incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I liked seeing Farouk get his feathers ruffled a little
Yeah.
bit. Finally, this whole episode I was so frustrated with Xavier. I just understand what David's been through. Step in and just murder Farouk. This would help things so much, But
But he gives such a Charles Xavier, like, perhaps we can talk to him.
Yeah.
no, let's just reason with him.
Yeah.
He's unreasonable.
See, I was more frustrated with David in that instance, because he comes in and you see that Farouk doesn't know who he is. So you should play that role, and then when you start playing the mind games, then Farouk is not, he doesn't know who you are, but he's kind of on to you. So I thought he kind of got rid of the disguise, I guess. I thought he got rid of that too quick. So I was like kind of frustrated. And, like, you're not really telling Xavier too much. You're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, and then I'm just gonna mess with him, and you're just gonna sit there and watch. So it was a little bit weird. So I was blaming it more on David.
But he gave him the knowledge cake so
Yeah.
that he could know like what all was happening, which I loved the way that they did
the
that with the
visuals with
projector.
Yeah.
Oh,
They could have
so
easily, showed it back in time. Oh, let's do like a little montage or something. But no, they showed it on their faces, and that was such an awesome touch. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
Nerding out
and
about that. I loved
it takes a while, because later in the episode gets another flash, Professor Xavier does, and he's still processing all of them. There was too much for him to take in, and I don't know, we don't have a real sense for how old he is at this point, how long he's been aware of his powers, but the fact that he doesn't even understand that there is an astral plane, I think, illustrates just how young he really is. And it's not just because he has hair, because in first class he has hair. So, this would be a long time before that, though. I think it's fairly clear.
In many ways, he's like mentally a baby, as David is an actual literal baby.
I suppose, but he's still Xavier. And he's
Sure,
still-
but it's more like he's going to be Xavier. It's sort of
Yeah.
like...
I understand that, but he's still smart. He's still intuitive. I don't know. I wanted him to.
Well, not so smart that he didn't jump on a plane to Morocco to meet someone called the Shadow King. So he's not that
Yeah.
smart.
True.
Even
True.
even flying there, it
also-
says, don't come here or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, all right then. go back. Like, you're smart enough to know if you hear something. You know,
What's compelling him to stay?
Well, he said,
his interest.
he does say that he's
curious.
lonely. Yeah.
Yeah, curiosity.
And look,
Loneliness and curiosity.
You asked that question.
mutant.
Why did he stay? Because you've never had a wife and a newborn child. So sometimes the idea of sitting down to have a nice Moroccan meal with someone you know is a murderer might be like, yeah, but at least I'll get some sleep.
I suppose.
It's mostly a joke.
Mostly.
I do like that they point out that he's an Omega mutant, though.
Yeah,
That's another
I
thing.
did take that note. You don't hear that terminology. I don't know that they ever use it in the movies or anything.
I don't
And
believe so.
Farouk is not listed. I mean, I did a little quick research. I was like, all right, I knew the main ones. So we got Phoenix, Legion, Storm, Magneto, Iceman, few others.
I'm sorry, I don't care what timeline this list is from. Iceman is an Omega nothing.
That's what they said
He's
in
an
this
ice.
one.
No, he's Frosty the Snowman.
yeah.
All right, but anyway, Farouk was never listed on any list that I came up with.
That's
so.
very interesting because I would say at the time that, it is impressive that Professor Xavier is able to beat him in the timeline of, well, whether it's the comic books or it's here, especially because David has he's gone back to like, hey, this is when you beat him, although you thought you beat him. And it's the same thing because back then he thinks that he kills Farouk and he has this experience that he's connected. He's inside Farouk's mind when he dies, so he kind of experiences it too. But as we find out quite a number of years later, it's just like it is in the show. In the comics, his consciousness lives on and he inhabits another body. So that would bring us to our other photograph, which would, well, there's several, but this would be New Mutants 31. And I think it's just such a great visual when you look, and this is only for our YouTube viewers, obviously. When you look at the box in the upper left hand, that visual of the obese physical manifestation of the Shadow King, that is something that we see all the time in the show.
The yellow-eyed man.
The yellow-eyed man, the creepy little doll. And
You
just
should never have
very quickly, what he does at this point in the timeline, there's a New Mutants character, a very lovely young lady named Karma. She's very thin, and he takes over her body, and she ends up weighing like 300, 400 pounds because he doesn't care about people at all. This is a conversation that I had with Chris Claremont once, who is the creator of David and a million of these characters. But and the Shadow King is just that it's the perfect representation of how little he cares for people, that he took this, he inhabited this young woman and destroyed her body.
But we're seeing that now with David too, specifically when
To
he's like
Switch.
asked about Switch, and
Yeah.
he's like, "No,
I don't care.
she's nobody. She's a means to an end."
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
flat out said, she is
It's
no
terrible.
one. And then
And
Charles having to
Everyone
say,
is someone.
"Everyone is someone, David," and he's like, "I just showed you all this
Yeah.
crazy town banana stuff, Dad. I've been through some things. All right, I get it. Like, Mom is weird sometimes. Just shut up and focus on what I'm saying,
Right.
Dad."
I had that as my note as the other very Charles Xavier moment. The first is, but David, I think we could reason with him. And then the other one is, everyone
talk to
is
the
someone. And you're
monster.
like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everyone is someone. Thanks, Charlie. Now sit down.
Yeah.
But
Thanks. And then it's like this child comes up and it's
Yeah.
like, "He put monsters in my brain," and all these people are screaming, "Well, I'm sure he's got redeeming qualities. He made a delightful jam."
yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And the water was delicious, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
I know. They
Delicious
smiled extra
water.
hard when they drank that water. I was jealous.
You just wish
It
you had
does.
some.
It does. It just seems like Xavier is just taking all of this in and
Well hydrated.
while hydrating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about in terms of this episode. But first, that under the desk has a very important message, although I'm not sure who's reading it. So, someone.
Yes.
It's not even being read. This is from the heart.
Yes,
Honestly, it is, because I just want to say thank you to the viewers, because you guys literally make us the ESPN of TV talk. Whether it's talking about Legion or talking about the other shows, we learn so much from the viewers and the comments, and we just love the interaction with you guys. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please give us that thumbs up and subscribe as well. If you guys are listening on iTunes and wherever else you're listening to, give us that 5 stars, because I need 5 of them as well, and then leave a comment. Always need 5 of them. But yeah, AfterBuzz has always been just a great place for me to learn, to like better myself and to meet new people and learn from the viewers. So I've loved my time here, and yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I want you to write that in my yearbook next week.
Hags.
No, it's gonna be for sure hags.
I'm gonna definitely write. Yeah, see you in September. But you should write that.
Or it'd be one of those people like, oh, you were awkward, but I mean, I guess we could be friends.
Yeah. Well, not that this isn't a tangent at all, but like if you go through your high school yearbook and it says things like, "I wish I'd known you better," you're like, "Yikes!" But anyway, before we dive back into the talk about the episode, this is very important. We have a super chat from Silhouetted Animator, who also gave us super chats last night on Marvel TV Weekly. So thank you.
What's a super
She's a real
chat?
MVP.
$5
Oh, $5.
kicked into So. And we had 2 of them last night, so I'm responsible for $15. Thank you very much. But he asks, and because of the fact that this derails a conversation, we're going to go right to this question. By the end of the series, do you think the events that occurred will inspire Professor Xavier to search for and create the X-Men? Jeff, I'll ask you first.
I think it will. I think it is like when you first walk in, you see the kids. That's the first thing that clicked for me, and I think it'll be more or less in the back of his mind is like, how can I help? And then he'll see the kids, and they'll be kind of like transitioning to that. So yeah.
What do you think, Alexa?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great way to end the series if everyone survives David.
Right. Well, yeah, because there's no way that we should assume that the timeline as we've witnessed it is going to happen. David, maybe everything does get destroyed.
Honestly, it could.
Yeah.
So.
Elena, do you think that that this could inspire him? Like, oh, there's probably a lot more bad guys out there like Amal Farouk.
Yeah.
I should probably
I think
get
definitely.
some group
I mean,
together.
especially because the big push is with Sid saying, like the whole reason that we had this timeout for her whole separate storyline being raised by Oliver and Melanie is that it's this idea that minds need to be shaped when they're young. So you need to have somebody there who's going to be a positive influence. So I can see him taking from all of this, that being the big overarching message, and it being kind of the impetus to create the X-Men and the school for youngsters, gifted youngsters.
And who would be the first person that he ends up contacting? But of course, Eric Lencher, Magneto, who of course is also very good-hearted and has the best of humanity's interests at heart. So good for him. He's a really good judge of character.
Best of the best.
His best friends are. It's like, I'm gonna go hang out with the Shadow King, and hey, this Magneto fellow seems like a swell dude.
He seems pretty neato.
He sure
Magneto.
You did.
Wow. So that's where we're at right now.
And Panther7 in the chat says,
I'm not sorry.
no, of course you're not sorry. Panther7 in the chat says, Iceman has been an Omega mutant for a long while, Christian, LOL. You know what? He's Bobby freaking Drake.
Yes.
He's one of Spider-Man's
Yes.
amazing
Just
friends.
'cause you don't
There
like
is
him.
nothing
Just 'cause-
Omega about him.
Just 'cause you don't
He's
like him.
barely in the movies. The only person in the movies less than him is Kitty Pryde, and that breaks my heart. But anyway.
Seems like somebody's being pretty cold about Iceman. Yeah.
We like that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We all
Thank
like
you
that one.
for supporting me in my list endeavor, saying that.
No, I'm
Iceman-
glad you did.
This water's
I'm glad
pretty
you
good.
did it. But I will never be convinced that Iceman's that powerful. In any case, let's get back on topic now, which is the
So
episode.
Switch is dying.
Yeah, and David doesn't care.
Doesn't care. She's losing
Who's
teeth.
surprised?
Not me.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
high.
I'm not surprised to see her like literally spitting teeth out like they're chiclets.
No.
You know, just like, oh, I'm losing. You know,
If she dies, what happens?
does David
to
get stuck or does he
David?
get kicked back to the present? That's what I was wondering.
I was
That-
assuming he'd get stuck.
Yeah.
And I
that's
thought they
what I
kind of
would
like
think.
teased it when he was.
Teased it.
Huh?
Nothing. Sorry.
Keep going,
That
Jeff.
one didn't even make sense.
Keep going, Jeff.
No, I was just saying that I thought they teased it. But what was interesting to me, I remember she says, "Dad, help." So I wonder if we're gonna see him kind of interacting somehow, and how it's gonna affect where she's at right now.
Robo Daddy is gonna.
Robo-Dad.
Robo Daddy might be real daddy because there's a lot of daddies here. So
We don't know that much about who that TV daddy is.
We really
so.
don't.
Again, who's your daddy? That's just what this episode is.
Absolutely. And
I am glad, though, that it was like his actual dad, because all of those girls calling David daddy grossed me out way worse.
It was. And then we finally get into David's mind again. All the doors around him.
And Professor Xavier was not ready for that.
No. Who
was,
can be?
And because we watch it...
Closed caption? You see the David... Oh, okay, can I...
No, well, then why don't you be the one to... Why don't you be the one to say it?
Okay, so...
Because...
Everybody...
So we watched it with closed captioning. I'll set it up. And then why don't I let you take my thunder away?
All right, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And so because we read it on closed captioning, what did we see?
We saw that all the different Davids have different spellings of their names. So there's Divad, D-I-V-A-D, and DVD.
Yes.
It's the same ones that we've seen this season, though.
Yeah,
right,
of course.
But it was nice to see. But usually you don't get them all at once, and they were coming so fast and furious.
We've had them this season.
Well,
this is the first time we noticed the names.
I guess
on
I never noticed their names.
Oh, really?
I'm usually so busy taking notes.
I noticed their names.
Well, Elena knows their names.
So what's up?
This is news to
Old
three
news.
of us.
But that was so cool. So go back and watch the episode with closed captioning.
It is
that's
weird,
the only
though.
reason
This is what's weird to me, though, because we've seen in the past the Davids talking to each other, and initially we saw, when the very, very first time that we saw the multiple ones, we saw the DVD, the diva, like D-I-V-A-D.
Divad?
What we saw this time. But then the second time we saw them, we saw David 1, David 2, David 3. They were listed differently. And then it switched back to this one. So it was like a weirdly inconsistent thing, but it seemed like it was intentionally inconsistent. So it was trying to figure out the difference in the Davids, which also sounds like a dope band name.
Difference in the Davids.
Oh, man.
So we have all those Davids, and Professor Xavier does what he does best, and he runs away. As the David, Daddy left us again.
He abandoned us like he always does.
And later in the episode, I think he does a really good job of actually owning up for it. He actually says, "You're right. It's my fault. I've been naive. I'm supposed to have the time." That he should have taken the time to figure out how to be a father instead of running away and then just immediately repeating it.
And one big metaphor of time monsters again.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he, so that's the whole point of what we were talking about earlier, is that he's just like, I just so wanted friendship that I, didn't want to be around my crying baby. So,
and Sid even points that out later, like to Gabrielle too, where she's like, it's too late later. Like you have to
love him now.
And that's, he's an adult.
That seems to be the whole point, the conversation. I thought that it was very interesting that female Kerry, was just like, so baby David's up there right now.
We can just kill him.
We just kill him.
Right.
Yeah. And Sid's like, no, we can't save adult David, but this is the one that we can try to save is baby David. So I thought that was very interesting and very fitting that Kerry's just like, so we should go kill that baby, right?
I love it too that she's just like, hey, remember last week when we had that whole separate episode about my life with Oliver and Melanie? That was for something. So I'm very clearly letting you know in this moment, this is what it's for. Old me would have been like, let's go kill that baby. And then the show would be over. We still have one episode. You want that money, as do I. So shush. Don't kill that baby.
Gabrielle.
That was a lot of context to that. That was a lot.
Gabrielle is so morbid too.
Well, look, her grandmother was crazy. Her mom went crazy at 16. So
she thinks she's crazy.
She got the crazy in early.
And then she lived through the Holocaust. So it's like,
well, she
gets a pass.
Here's the thing about Gabrielle.
Suppose yes.
She is great at small talk. Have you ever seen a masquerade? Great starting point for a conversation.
Masquerade.
Try that at your next dinner party.
All animals fight to be like whatever we wanted, what we want or not, and all of a sudden, what I want to talk about is how Sid somehow didn't realize that was David's mom. She walked into the situation, sees this woman there and a baby, and doesn't realize that she walked into David's past.
I mean, they don't know when or where they're at. They just I
understand that,
walk
but
into this.
If she's following David, she would probably assume that she's going into David's past. Well, she
didn't have any sense where he was going to. I'm inclined to agree with you, but I can try and reason out why she didn't assume right away that, there's a baby. It has to be baby David.
I mean...
Yeah.
2 and 2.
Yeah, I don't know. But
But at the same time, they've been like all over the dadgum place. So it could just be like, oh, cool, we need to do some stuff, but looks like we're hanging out with a lady and her weird doors and a random baby.
and
You know,
Yeah.
like
There's just a random door like 10 feet away from
and,
the house.
and here's the thing: they're getting back to Baby David, and the idea that Kerry's so quick to want to kill him. It really depends on the way you look at time travel, because if you follow the Avengers Endgame method of time travel, it would not change anything. Killing Baby David wouldn't make present-day David disappear, as evidenced by
Chris Evans.
it would split
Chris
off.
Evans. No, specifically when present-day Nebula shot 2012 Nebula, she should have disappeared from anything I'd ever seen before, but then she didn't. So, time travel is like, whatever. What do you want it to be for the story? It can go ahead and be that. So that would have
Whatever.
been...
Don't even get me started with Nebula, who could have easily been like, by the way, don't go get that stone. Things go awry. I already know what happens. I'm just not going to say anything.
That's not who she is. Come on. But anyway, so I think that I'm glad the story didn't take that turn, but they could have killed Baby David and been like, oh, hey, old David's still here.
But I like that they have like that whole, because there's the whole recurring kind of trope of the like go back in time and kill baby Hitler that people have, had integrated into so many different storylines.
Or even back to Endgame for a moment, Rhodey wanted to kill baby Thanos.
Yep.
So,
Christian, I actually think I have the answer right here.
okay, great.
The time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yes,
That makes
exactly.
sense.
That is, he explained
If you
it
could
perfectly.
also
lot
look up
of sense.
Jeremy Bearimy, that will also clarify
I feel
everything.
like everything makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean,
Time is a
absolutely.
Jeremy Bearimy.
Yeah.
And we all live in the eye,
Jeremy Bearimy.
the dot in the eye of the Jeremy
So,
Bearimy.
and by the way, let's not forget the fact that male Carey is like
In
close to
He's
dead.
Okay,
dying.
He's like so close to
What-
dead.
what did I say last episode? I was like, male Kerry seems to be in pretty bad shape, guys. And they're like, you guys are like, nah, he's fine. He just took his.
When
some-
did that happen?
when
We
did
all
this
were
expire?
like,
No way.
yeah, it's pretty
No,
rough.
I
He's
was
just not dead.
No, I was like,
I
yeah,
said-
but he's in a wheelchair, so he's fine.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that he took the injuries way
Yeah.
worse than she would have ever.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe he should have
Well-
hit the gym a little bit more often.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, I said that too, because he also like got all of the ass kicking at once.
And they actually
and
say
punctured
what happens to
Yeah,
them.
they
You're
had
like,
a
you're like a
concussion.
concussion
Yeah.
and punctured lungs.
Yeah.
So
You're
like,
concussed and you have a punctured lung and you're old.
How is he even still?
He's
al-
like, cool,
living
thanks
with
for the
all that.
little insult to injury that you threw in there at the end, young Carrie. Please please note my age one more time as I sit here with all of your injuries, because you're not as good as fighting as you.
I mean, he even reiterated what Sid was saying. He was like, a baby? And it's like, yeah, like, we're not going to kill the baby. Trying like, what are you... Because she didn't even want to tell him the story. She's like, what's going on? Don't worry about it. We just got to leave. No, what's going on?
Yeah.
There's a baby up there. It's like, okay, it's a baby. And then, so just reiterating for her and for the audience that you don't just kill the baby.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I like her whole thing about, like, is it gonna be, a freaking dick when it grows up? Probably. But right now, it's just a baby. So, we can't.
And I like how they harken back to Ye Harry Potter, and we're like, there's no good stronger than a mother's love. Mother's love will conquer all things, and
I mean, it depends on who your mother is, though.
Yeah.
When you really
Yeah.
think about it. And so, Gabrielle, the interesting thing is what we've learned in the 2 episodes that she's been in. She's definitely a little bit crazy, but she's not as crazy as she thinks she is, because she's got people traveling through time trying to warn her and tell her about things. And the voices in her head are telepaths, not multiple personalities, nothing crazy. It's like, no, everybody made her this way. David made her this way. Definitely Farouk made her that way.
Yeah.
But I think even Sid and the Kerrys being there is also messing her up. So
A door that's like 10 feet or 15 feet away from the house. That also makes you crazy sometimes. But,
But I love that, like the metaphor of being haunted by the potential future that you could have had,
Sure.
and the idea of people surviving even in times that they may not want to, and this whole kind of metaphor for depression and everything, and about like living through into a scenario that you're kind of lost because you have this mental block of what could have been.
But my question is, do you think that she's going to take everything that everyone says to heart and actually implement?
No, she's gonna pop a Xanax.
What a crazy dream!
She's definitely gonna self-medicate, and everything's gonna happen the same way that it did. But I did think that Gabrielle and Sid had a very nice heart-to-heart conversation. You know, essentially, could have been her mother-in-law in some weird time travel way, but that's not where we are now. But I would say that for me, I thought the interesting thing was when they were talking about mental illness and depression, and Gabrielle has such the old school way of like, yeah, that's what somebody weak would call it. That's not the term she used, but she was very dismissive of it. It's like, no, I'm crazy. Like, you can call it whatever you want.
It's weak. She says mental illness. What a clinical term for something so raw, like an animal with their heart on the outside.
Very good, because I didn't take notes during that part. I was too busy.
I memorized it.
Very good.
No, but I wrote that quote down too. It was really good.
Okay, so everybody wrote that quote down except me. Good.
Look at us all
good.
knowing stuff.
So what was the next line then?
The next
Yeah, Jeff.
Next line was,
Thank you, Jeff.
There's no good stronger than a mother's love. That was the next line.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's what most of the show was about. So,
and then David popped out and said, "Shut it, Jeff," and then closed the door.
one of the things that we talked about, and Brianna, this would be our final image that I have there, the one that I thought I would use first. And we had as close a physical representation of David from the comic books that we had. This is the basically the first appearance of him, so that's why I chose this one. But you see he's got the spiky hair, but of course even in comic book representation, he also has multiple personalities, and the comic book difference is that none of them are other Davids. These are all these other actual people inside of them. But anyway, so I thought that was another visual thing where it's like, oh, we're getting these little tiny nods. They're not following the stories per se that are from the comic books, but we do get all these Davids, and that seems to be our primary David, for lack of a better way to classify him. He figures that that's why they're going to be able to beat Farouk. It's like, well, the last time you beat him, but he survived. Now we're going to kill him because this time you have me. And I thought that was perfect timing for our present-day Farouk, who had been trapped kind of in that painting for a little bit, to show up. And it's like, and then young Farouk is just like, interesting.
Yeah.
So I will ask you first, Elena, what did you think of sort of that, it all culminated in that moment where we had two Farouks?
I mean, I really, really like that they have this set up so we know going into the finale, this is the clear battle that each of them thinks that they have an advantage, that they actually don't, that they're evenly matched, that it really is 2 versus 2 when each thinks that they have this upper hand.
But I think that David is greater than 1 because there are so many of him. But that might actually be what makes him weaker, is that it's so fragmented. And whereas like Professor Xavier, it's very concentrated. It's his mind is right.
He's like a mind mosaic at this point. But I feel like, I don't know, I'm interested to see how it all kind of comes together. I'm mostly interested to see what happens with Switch. And if anything's going to happen with her dad and kind of what's going on with that and the whole robot imagery. But I do hope that we have some more of the time demons, because having them come into like the whole room kind of being
that was a very cool
apart.
sequence. That baby David seems to survive while everything else changed around him. And it also reminds me that one of the items in his crib, there was the moment where Gabrielle gave him a very practical stuffed red teddy bear instead of a frightening, horrifying Hitler lookalike doll. So although that was back later, I was like, oh, look, it's a red teddy bear. Yeah, so she does know how to be a mother. Okay, great. But that disappeared thanks to the time demons. Anyway, what did you think, Alexa, as it all culminated in the 2 Farouks versus the Xavier boys, for lack of a better terminology?
Xavier boys. I like
Xavier boys.
that.
That's my new band name.
I'm one of those audience members that is now, despite how terrible of a person David is, I want him to succeed and get Farouk out of his brain. I do. I want him to just annihilate Farouk, and then everyone else can annihilate him. But I do want to see him beat Farouk. And so when I saw Farouk emerge from the painting, I was just like, oh, what timing. This is such crap timing. Like, why does there have to be double Farouk versus double Xavier boys?
You got to level the playing field.
I guess
you
so,
know?
but if we're calling Farouk an Omega level mutant, he should be
Wait,
able to
although-
handle both.
Hey, he's no Iceman. You know, I guess Farouk is strong.
There's levels to this. Iceman, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Iceman could have turned a king into a monkey. I'm sure
yeah.
Iceman could do that anytime he wants to.
The Elsa of the X-Men.
They got me though. I
He's
didn't.
more of an Anna, though, in all honesty. He has Elsa's power, but his personality. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No,
Elsa?
I was basically gonna say they got me in that I didn't see that the two Farouks were gonna come in. I was like, oh, I forgot about Farouk in the.
It was one of those moments where I'm like,
The
oh,
astral
I
plane.
should have seen that coming.
Yes, I should
but
have.
I did not. I did not see
Oh, good.
it. Yeah.
So high five.
High five from far away. And Jeff, what did you
Yeah,
think?
I didn't see it coming either, but I was actually excited when it did because I was like, this sets the stage for a massive like showdown for both of them.
Yeah.
And then we get a little tease in the trailer for next episode where modern day Farouk, or the Farouk that we've known, is in the room with David in the multiple doors. So I'm excited to see how maybe David uses his multiple personalities against Farouk rather than it hurting him and use him in his powers. So I'm excited for this. I think it's gonna be a great showdown. And I'm expecting a lot of Davids, a lot of legions. So it'll be cool.
It's gonna be awesome to see
And
Xavier in battle though. Like, come on, it's gonna
Oh,
be
yeah.
pretty cool.
But you know, to quote the person from the video that Brianna showed a moment ago, the idea that it's the finale. I don't want to go.
I
I don't want to stop hanging out with you guys on Mondays and talking about this show.
I'm gonna be sad, man.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to make
We'll
somebody
just
cry.
go back in time. It's fine.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Just hit up
back
Twitch.
to our burger last week.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just do that.
Yeah, and I'm for
I will
sure getting chicken and
gladly
waffles.
Go back to that burger. Yes.
If we hit the rewind, I'm for sure getting chicken and waffles. Just saying.
We go back to that's
water.
that's your time loop.
that
that is
is-
like the torturous is that
And-
you don't order chicken and waffles every time, and you're like, no.
There was
To
the
be,
bad
fa-
part-
to be fair, that's worth Switch losing all of her teeth. If you can go back and have chicken and waffles instead of that burger.
The sad part is there was multiple people that told me get chicken and waffles. You know what I did? I got a burger. Not happy about it.
You're talking to
That's-
one of them right
yeah.
now, but I'm pretty sure you should get the chicken and waffles.
Well,
anyway,
at least you can chew it. You haven't lost all your teeth like poor Switch.
Yeah, and I don't know
She has
where.
to gum her burger.
the waffle would have been better for her. But there were no chicken nor waffles on this episode. But it is time for our special segment, musical cue. Oh.
Is this just fantasy?
We're so on cue with it.
Yeah,
so
we nailed
good.
it. And so
Time demons.
this is when
all right?
we isolate something that was it real or was it imagined? Is that your vote, Elena? The time demons, are they real or are they just fantasy?
No, I was just saying that's why we weren't in sync.
Oh, okay.
Is because
Yeah,
the time
because time
demons
stuttered.
glitched us.
Yeah. Do you have?
They were a delight.
What do you have for a? Is this in real life or is this just
man.
fantasy?
There's just so many.
There are
There's
very
so
many.
on this one. It's hard to.
It's most of the episode.
I got one.
Okay, well then Alexa's apparently.
You go.
Okay. Teacher, pick me.
Yes, Alexa, go ahead.
Okay. So the scene when oh my gosh, Gabrielle and Sid are talking,
Yes.
and Gabrielle actually asks Sid, "Are you actually here? Are you really
Yeah.
here?" Sid goes, "Sighs." She didn't
And
answer.
Sid says, sigh.
So that's my moment of I think
Well, I
that
think
was
she's
real.
really there, but in a way, I mean, she's not really there. She has traveled through time, and she is physically standing there.
She is
but she
there.
doesn't belong there.
She doesn't belong there, but
right.
she's there.
And she will soon not be there, regardless of what happens. She will go back to where she belongs.
Is everyone gonna die if Switch just dies? Like,
No, they just get stuck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
all right, guys.
What was your? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy moment? Jeff?
Mine was we first see that there's different levels to this mind game, and there's different levels to the powers. So mine was when we saw Farouk's subject bring Charles over to Farouk. You see him like hold the door of the car, and then he just disappears, and he's holding the door open of the house. So he like kind of pops and moves in different places. So I was wondering if that was just a mind game for Farouk trying to get Charles into the house. Not like he needed help, but just away. So I didn't know if that was like if he was really there or if it was just fake.
Well, that would kind of reinforce the idea that maybe Farouk is like, I cannot believe that guy's just walking in here. Like, he's an Omega level mutant, that's for sure. And whether I'm listed as one or not, he definitely is. He should know better, but he doesn't. Let's have dinner. What do you have?
I think the whole shadow theater thing, the whole shadow puppet thing, especially when he's saying, he was armed with his magic phrase, and the phrase is, "You should have never come."
Yeah.
And it like harkens back to his dream where he has the yellow-eyed demon there, like in the whole theater thing. It seems like that was almost like it was in Farouk's mindscape.
If he should have never came, why did David not just go back to the moment prior Xavier decided to go see Farouk?
Well,
Because
he wants
David
to kill-
fell into the hallway too. He didn't really get to pick.
David wants to kill Farouk. David doesn't want to stop Professor Xavier from meeting him. He wants to kill him.
He wants to kill him.
He needs him. He wants to kill him dead. Like,
But he
that's-
also
that's
is
good-
dead.
That makes
that's
sense.
good
He also
killing.
just keeps falling into different
He does.
timelines too. Like
I
it's
still-
kind of like he's like, "Well, I'm here now. I guess
Yeah.
I'll do what I can."
Still love how
Who's
they
a great David.
portray time. How they
I'm
portray
spiky hair, and I'm David.
how they portray time is so great.
I love that
hallway.
Visually,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
For me, I'm sort of wondering, the mute children, in the same way that we see that the monkey was not actually a monkey, it was just sort of that was the representation. So what was real about them? Were there mute children? Could they all talk? Could Professor Xavier interact with her because he's a telepath? I know we saw her mouth move, but that just might have been, the way that we saw it on screen. So I don't know what was real about those kids because what we saw, when the little girl said, make them stop screaming, that they're inside of her. And she had a great line too. Every tyrant has his supporters, which is true. I will make no political statements based on that. I was just saying that is up to interpretation. People can take that information and process it however they choose. That every tyrant has supporters. I got nothing on that. Believe me, I don't have anything to say about that. But I thought that it was a great interaction, and then I was just like, what's with these kids?
You know what I hate to say, though? It actually made me feel better knowing that the monkey wasn't just an abused monkey and that it was a poor king that was being held in the body of a monkey and abused.
Because he had a good run
it's
as
like,
king. He got to be king at some point.
Yeah, but I'm also
It's good
like,
to be king.
if it's just a monkey, I'm like, poor monkey.
Or
But I'm like,
wait.
oh, you're a person. No person is without fault.
Or was he King Louis from the Jungle Book, who is the Monkey King?
Want to be like you.
Or
Anyway.
the Nazi monkey from Indiana Jones.
True.
Also
Eat some
true.
dates.
I do want
Kill
to
that
mention something
monkey.
about the kids. When he walked in to see the kids for the first time, they were like aimlessly running around. It just seemed like
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't
what
have.
kids do.
Yeah,
No,
that's
no, no.
just children.
No, but it seemed like they weren't playing. They were just running.
Yeah,
in
that's children.
circles and just.
That's
No,
just what
but
children
But
do.
something
I see what you're
seemed
saying.
off.
There was something very off about that whole situation, everything there, and I thought it was a great interaction between Farouk and Charles. Just
With all the movement around
talking about
them.
like, well, of course I took in these children. It was it was just being decent, which of course that's
All
when,
babies are crazy.
Well, yeah, that was really the big takeaway. And
Mother's love.
I wrote that down because I'm like, oh, that is absolutely true. I don't know at
babies
what
are
point
crazy.
they stop being crazy. I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and they're both crazy.
They don't.
So it hasn't stopped yet. Yeah.
I'm not worried about crazy babies. I'm worried about the men that they become and the fire that will burn. I'm like,
That will
jeez,
be
Sid,
that
It was
will be
like
my
from
calm
dark to
down. You
darker.
just met this woman.
Yeah, and
Take
remember,
a break. And then
she's lived through
Gabrielle's
the,
like, I can one up you. You ever seen a mass grave, man?
she's lived through the
Talk to me about
Holocaust.
the
Go easy
fire
on
of
her.
men.
In any case, that is the time we
On
have.
that note,
I had to make sure we didn't get any more super chats because if I
you
did,
better mom so your son doesn't suck.
True.
yes. And William M. ATL makes the point that Farouk's place reminded me of David's cult house. Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
It was,
Yeah.
David had the decency that they were adult women instead of children.
But David has the Kool-Aid and Farouk's got the water, so
But according
Yeah.
to Jeff, that water's pretty
It's
amazing.
bomb.
Look, you gotta
water.
be hydrated.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hydrated. I just made up a word. You know what I mean?
And Renji90998 says, for a moment I thought we'd see young Storm in the 90s cartoon. She worked for the Shadow King.
Ooh,
and
called it.
in that issue that I showed, Uncanny X-Men 117, you see a young Storm pick Charles Xavier's pocket And that's just she's very young in that. She's a child. So I thought we could have gotten that, but that little girl clearly wasn't her.
Yeah.
So, maybe next time. Maybe next time we'll get a cameo by Young Storm. Anyway, that is all the time we have, and we only have one more episode.
Captain, what?
I don't know that I've ever done a final episode of a series before. I mean, I guess technically Jessica Jones, but that wasn't the same.
Sad.
So this is very sad, but we will be back next Monday.
Yeah.
What were you going to say,
I
Alexa?
was just gonna ask them if they're gonna miss us.
I'm going to miss you.
I'll miss you too.
Yeah, all right.
Yes.
But we'll be back next Monday at 9 o'clock for what we assume will be a long episode of the show. But until then, Jeff, where can people find you?
You guys can find me down the street getting chicken and waffles or at JeffWill_Jr. on all your social media platforms.
Alexa, chicken and waffles tonight?
No.
Oh, okay.
You can find me on Instagram at Alexa Cappy, Cappy.
And Elena.
I'm Alana Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at Alana Jordan and on Instagram at Alana J. Jordan.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Thursdays over on the Popcorn Talk Network, 1 p.m. Pacific for Marvel movie news. Back here on AfterBuzz TV Sundays at 9 Pacific for Marvel TV Weekly. But we will be back next Monday at 9 for the Legion After Show. Until then,
See you later, guys.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.